All right, cool. I'm sure we probably have some more people that will be trickling in. But hello, welcome, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Lauren, focusing on BD and partnerships here at 3Box Labs. Very excited to have you all joining our July community call, talking about all things ceramic. And today is a really exciting call because we're going to be talking about our roadmap and all the exciting changes that are coming to ceramic. And there's a lot of exciting things that are happening over the next couple of months. So we've shared, I think, some kind of snippets or teasers of everything to come, but today we'll go into much more detail, both from kind of a product perspective, but also just community and how we're thinking about continuing to evolve as an ecosystem. So excited to share and obviously get all of your input here. So please feel free to drop questions, comments in the chat throughout. You can also raise your hand if you want to speak, have questions, want to discuss anything. We'll definitely leave time at the end to do that. For now, I'm going to pass it over to Michael, who is the co-founder and CEO of 3Box Labs, and he's going to kick it off today.
Great, thanks. We have some slides to help me out here. Avi, do you mind pulling them up? Cool, and we can jump to the next one. So as Lauren said, we're going to talk about what's coming for ceramic, basically over the next quarter and a half or 2 quarters. But what's landing near term? So as Lauren said, we've been basically talking a lot about, how we can improve the types of applications that people build on ceramic and how can we improve the developer experience of building those apps. And so basically we are adding graph database capabilities to ceramic and really, rethinking the core data model of your ceramic application from a simple JSON object that you might use if you're building on ceramic today to a set of JSON objects with relationships between them. And so, building applications on top of ceramic using these graph data models makes it really easy to sort of specify all sorts of relationships between entity types, right? So between users and their data, or between a blog post and comments on that blog post and likes on those comments, members of a DAO, verifiable credentials, sort of all of these use cases are really built around how are we storing and retrieving information from a composable graph, which is Web3. And so this new release with graph database functionality will make it a lot easier to build more sophisticated applications. Along with that, it's going to be easier to compose and share data across applications because we've sort of refactored the way that composability works on ceramic today. We have this notion of data models, which you've definitely used if you've built on ceramic, and we're really evolving those into a more abstract concept, which is simpler, called composites. And composites are basically collections of models. And so you can think of your composite as really your database schema, and applications can share models and composites. And simply by reusing those database schemas, you get to reuse all the data that's stored in those database schemas. And so that becomes a lot easier. This is all made possible because we're going to be adding an index database to every ceramic node. So it's a SQL database, could be SQLite or Postgres. And what this allows you to do is perform queries on structured data on the node versus needing to build custom indexers and other sorts of bespoke solutions. So this should make actually building real-time applications with complex queries much easier. We're making it easier to sign in with your wallet. And so, rethinking how accounts and identities work on ceramic today, there's a system called 3ID, which a lot of you are probably familiar with. Well, we're sort of transitioning to a system based on DID-PKH. And there's some specifics there, which I'll let the rest of the team go into as we dive specifically into the roadmap. But really what this means is that users can now sign in to a ceramic application using their native Web3 wallet, such as MetaMask or any other Web3 wallet, whereas today they might see a pop-up, which is a user experience issue that we've worked to correct. And so now things will feel much more native. You'll have much more capabilities on how to grant permissions to data and a whole suite of things. And lastly, the way all this is packaged and bundled and documented is going to get way better. Today, Ceramic is sort of a fragmented ecosystem of tooling that is like roughly optional. And so there are a lot of different integrations which actually use a different collection of tooling. And so we're consolidating all of that into a couple standard packages and monorepos and libraries, which sort of like fit together nicely, all in service of this new graph database system. So that's like a quick overview. I'll open any questions off the bat, but otherwise would turn it over to the rest of the team to actually go into each of these specific things on the roadmap. And obviously you could just jump past the product pages here and you could just focus on the roadmap.
So I think we can, Michael, I can cover the next couple, or if you want to continue kind of in depth, let me know what makes sense from here.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess there's 4 slides that call out some of the big features, and so it might be worth going into. So the first one, as I mentioned, graph database. Really what the impetus for creating this was, is we've been looking for a solution for storing long lists in Ceramic. Basically, how can you map, let's say a user has a ton of tweets. How do you map all of those tweets to a given user? Where do you store those relationships? And in the current version of Ceramic, that looks a lot like, attempting to store them all in a single stream, a single document. And so as you add more relationships, the size of that document keeps growing and growing, and the time it takes to sync in the general performance characteristics of that document diminish over time. And so that wasn't scalable. And so as we rethought how might we store the state of these various relationships between a user and their tweets, or between a blog post and its comments, or between 2 users in a social graph, we really needed to sort of fundamentally rethink how Ceramic was designed. And so we sort of unbundled some of the pieces, and what we really ended up with is a system that now supports indexing based on relationships, and storing that index in a SQL database, which makes it really easy for your application to perform operations on. And so this index database, which actually stores the data for your composites, which we'll go into next, is accessed now by a GraphQL client. So today, if you're interacting with IDX or the data store or Ceramic, it's really just HTTP requests, and it's not a very intuitive interface for actually developing an application on top of. Now we'll have support for GraphQL, so it will allow you to sort of make specific and complex query requests and sort of manipulate nodes in the graph according to more comprehensible APIs and logic. Cool. So composites is really what makes all this possible. As we said, you can think of a composite like your applications database schema, and a composite consists of one or many models. So your models are like your JSON schemas, and your composite is like your application schema and your API. And so the way that a composite works, it sort of forms the basis of every database on Ceramic. And so, like we said, as you spin up on your Ceramic node, now we'll have a database where you configure that database by basically plugging in your composite. And so on the server side, now your Ceramic node is aware of the structure of the data that your application will use, and so can index the network and build that database for you. And conversely, on the client side, you just plug your composite into your client, and now your client knows how to query and access data from your database. And thirdly, because this is sort of a module that is composable in and of itself and can be reused across applications, it really enables the sort of data composability that is the heart of Ceramic, truly. And simply by reusing a model from another composite, or taking someone's composite wholesale and just reusing it, or forking it and remixing it and sort of like adding some of your own features to it, it really enables data to seamlessly flow across applications. We're making improvements to how data models are discovered and sort of submitted to the community today that largely exists on the GitHub repo. Tomorrow we'll be running some community APIs that sort of allow different interfaces and tooling to display all the models that have been used in the network, making them available for you to just simply plug into your app. Mentioned a bit about authentication. And again, I think this is a fairly nuanced topic because every application sort of might implement things slightly differently or have different needs. But authentication is getting massively upgraded to support more advanced data permissions, user-based sessions, which kind of look more like and feel more like a bit of a Web 2 experience. It's going to feel better from a user's perspective because they won't have a third-party pop-up. It'll sort of live right in their wallet. And this is sort of an ongoing effort, chain agnostic. So there's projects from a bunch of different blockchain ecosystems sort of all coming together to work on the standards. And so at Ceramic, we're pushing those and sort of working to support them. So sort of all the Web3 protocols will be using sort of the same fundamental accounting system, which makes overall Web3 much more resilient and easy to use. And so I guess one call out is, what does this mean for existing integrations with Ceramic and how will this affect my stack? So we won't be officially deprecating any of the functionality that is currently available. So did data store, 3ID Connect, those things will continue to exist for a while, although we will not be, as 3Wax Labs, dedicating like tons of development time to improving those. They'll pretty much stay as they are because most applications are either transitioning to the new infrastructure and new applications will just get built on it from the beginning. And so if you have questions about what changing or upgrading to the new system exactly looks like and how that's done, of course, we're happy to help. I'm sure the rest of the team will give you some ways to get in touch with them later. And so, yeah, I think that covers most of the high level.
Hey everyone, so I'm Avi. I'm on Michael's team as a product manager, and Justina, our DevRel lead, and Kate, our product marketing person, and I have been kind of collaborating on this community roadmap. So I'll take the first chunk, but this is going to be a living document that they've started to basically be transparent about how all these pieces are actually coming together and moving. And so I'll call out the graph release portions that you're going to see, and then Kate and Justina are going to cover some other parts here. So as a whole, we talked about models briefly, and those are around how do we structure data, how do we create collections where a composite could be all the different social related data models, and models would be an example like a post or a comment or like. And so that's in progress right now. We think almost all these things will be wrapped up by mid-August. Some of this already, as you can see by status, is in progress or about to wrap up. So models will be an extension of that kind of concept around how you can structure data and allow it to be reused. Developer tools, as mentioned, are things that are the tools you would use to actually create those things. And so the composites dev tools and the CLI are for creating composites, and the Ceramic graphical client at runtime is what you would use, similar to the data store today. And so that's also in progress on dev tools. And then infrastructure side, the indexing part is also related to GraphDB, that's in progress. And if you double click on these, and we can, if there's time, we can go into detail and kind of answer some questions. But this is really the core things that are essential for this first release. And it's coming in mid-August. And so that's kind of the big upcoming stuff. And I'll let Kate take over and talk about the account section around this new account stack.
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Kate. Like Avi said, I lead product marketing here at 3Box. Michael explained accounts earlier, and the projects in this column revolve around wallet native authentication and mostly access control features. So we already shipped sign-in with Ethereum, and what we're working on now is sign-in with Solana. Both of these are specifications developed by the industry, and they basically allow users to sign in with their wallet, which then enables apps to provide user-friendly authentication. The big plus side to this that Michael mentioned is that there won't be any annoying wallet pop-ups that prompt users to sign data transactions. And we plan to continue working with the Casa org to develop standards for signing in with wallets on any chain, so not just Ethereum and Solana. So we'll be sharing and updating these changes as they become available in the future. The next one is Cacao. So Cacao is capability-based access control. It's basically a library for a permissions model. One of the first use cases of permissions will be creating what we call sessions. Sessions are going to allow users to seamlessly sign in with their wallet, and they can then delegate actions such as liking a post, as well as delegate storage permissions to developers for time-bound periods. Another use case that we have coming is long-lived permissions, which will allow async usage, even if the user is not online. So the key focus with this is just enabling familiar experiences for end users, more like the kind that they're used to in Web 2. And then the last bucket is we're in the early stages of planning some new integrations with access control and encryption protocols. So one that we already have live is with LIT protocol, but we'll be updating the roadmap regularly to provide more info around privacy ecosystem integrations as we move forward. And that is pretty much the high level of those items.
Right, and then, yeah, also, hi everyone, I'm Justina. I am a developer success lead at 3Box Labs. So I will talk about a few projects on infrastructure side and ecosystem as well. So on infrastructure side, we have a few projects that are still in progress. One of them is on scalability and performance. And here we are basically trying to make sure that we scale our ceramic anchor service as we grow. And the key to this project is to tackle two things. One of them is to make sure that we run multiple ceramic anchor service nodes so that we scale things better and there are no outages. And also because we want to make sure that we have a good schedule for when anchoring happens, because as of now, we didn't really have a specific cadence when anchoring happens, and that obviously comes with specific risks that some commits can be rejected. So we want to make sure that we find an optimal time and schedule for when anchoring should be happening going forward. Another project on observability. So I want to make it easier for developers to measure how their nodes are performing, and we are planning to build out the tooling around that and share dashboards, potentially on Grafana, with developers so that they can use them to monitor how their nodes are performing and making it easier to get a better overview of how things are going. The last project on infrastructure side, nodes as a service. So this is a project that is still really early stage, still under consideration. So as of now, developers have to either run their own node or they can use community provided nodes. But we want to make it easier to do that going forward, and in general give developers a little bit more options in how they can build on ceramic. So one thing that we are exploring is potentially offering a commercial node provider as an option. Again, this is something that we are still looking into, exploring, and when we have more updates on this end, we will definitely share that with you. And then there are two projects on the ecosystem side. One of them is Ceramic Forum. This project is actually already live, and I will drop the link to our forum. We launched it just a few weeks ago. With Ceramic Forum, we want to make it easier for our community members to ask questions and get support from the technical perspective. So we did get some feedback that Discord maybe is not the best platform to search through technical information that people share on Discord and in general get answers to technical questions. So from now on, forum will be the #1 place where everyone should go and ask technical questions around all things ceramic. And also I would like to encourage community members to spend some time on our forum and help out other community members by answering their questions. Yeah, we launched it just a few weeks ago. We will do a little bit more scaling around that and make sure that everyone in our community knows that forum is available. And last but not least, the project around community grants, roles, and rewards. So with everything that we do at Ceramic, obviously we want to build a healthy and vibrant community, and that involves a lot of different things that go beyond just simple technical support. That also involves helping community members figuring out how they can get involved, how they can contribute, and how they can get rewarded for all the great work that they're doing. So this is a very early stage project that we want to bring to life and build out all that function in terms of what kind of roles community members can take as they participate in our community, what kind of grants we could provide, and what kind of rewards we could offer our community members. So really excited about this one. And when we have more updates on this one, we'll definitely share that with you as well. I did share the link to the roadmap in the chat. So this will live on our documentation, and we will make sure that roadmap overall is updated and you get up-to-date information on the status of the projects there. And I also dropped the link to the forum. So I think now we can answer any questions about the projects. So I will just hand it back to Avi and Lauren.
Yeah, I'll just kind of open floor. We've been sharing a lot of information. So any questions from anyone on the line, feel free to put it in the chat, the Q&A, or raise your hand if you want to talk. We'll just give it a minute if there's anything you want to go deeper on. Question around indexing. I don't know, Joel or Spencer, do one of you guys want to take this? It's in the chat.
Yeah, let me just give me a sec to read it. If my node is indexing profiles, will it only index profiles created on that node, or will it pull in all profiles from the network? Would I tell the node somehow to pull in a profile for a user I'm interested in? Yeah, so when you configure, the way the indexing project will work is your application that's connected to a specific Ceramic node, that Ceramic node will be configured with the models that it wants to index. So Michael before talked about how composites are basically your database schema for your application. So your composite gathers up a bunch of different models. You deploy that composite to your node, which tells your node to start indexing those models. And what that means is it will index all the data created within that model. So that includes documents that are created or updated through your application through that node will go directly into the index. But it also includes documents through streams that are created or updated on other nodes on the network that are using the same model. So in the example of profiles, if there's many different applications sharing the profile model, then as your node hears about updates to profiles from other nodes in the network via our like peer-to-peer gossip PubSub system, the node will add those updates to its local copy of the index and keep a copy of all the profiles that it hears about. An important note for sort of the first preliminary version of this that goes live in a couple months is that the preliminary version will only be able to index rights and documents that it hears about while it is online. So if there were profiles that were created before the node ever came online or started indexing, it would not necessarily know about those profiles. Or if the node goes down for maintenance for a while and there's a profile that's created during the period while it's down, it might miss it for hearing about that. So one of the very first follow-ups that we're going to be doing to this project after sort of the initial version goes out is a project around historical indexing, where we'll actually be able to configure a node to do a sort of historical sync, where it'll go out and discover other streams and documents created within the models that it's configured to index. It will go out and discover those from the rest of the network, even if those were created before the node ever came online. So that will be a follow-up coming shortly thereafter the initial release. That answer the question sufficiently, I hope. So follow up, will there be a standard basic profile composite? there will be something like that. I don't know. We're currently as a team thinking about which models or composites we want to sort of launch with on day one, but part of the goal here is to make it really easy for the community to define new models as well. So anything that like we as a team don't define, we encourage community members and users to go out and define their own. But profile is such an obvious use case that it is likely that when we launch the new system, we will have a couple of basic profile models sort of that we'll predefine just to kickstart the network a little bit. It might not be one singular basic profile like we had in sort of the old model system, but likely a handful of smaller, more targeted models for different pieces of the profile that then can be composed together into sort of a more complete vision of a view of a profile. So that makes it easier for apps that like only care about different pieces. Like, we might have like a profile picture model, right? That's like just for the image, but like doesn't necessarily have a username. And then you might have the username as a separate one. And if you want both, you can pull them both in. And that's sort of the whole idea of this system is around this composability and being to have these like small building blocks that you can group together into larger structures that are useful.
Yeah, and I would just say, as we're starting to think about working on this as a team, does Bulik and others, if you have like thoughts based on working with the basic profile model that we had before, and want to have kind of like input or share feedback, we'd love to have that. So definitely just let us know. Reach out. Any other questions before I think we have like two more slides, just kind of closing and next steps, but open floor again for community. Anything else to ask or any feedback or reactions?
We'd love to know what's missing. So if there's something else that you'd like to see, I know the one thing we want to do is more granularity around timing. And when we get there, we'll definitely share, but we'd love to see any feedback from you guys around what's important or what would you like to see here?
And to clarify, Avi, are you asking about projects that you'd like to hear about, or more about the roadmap itself and what information you sent in the roadmap?
I think feedback on the format roadmap, like what information should we be bubbling up to you guys?
Cool, appreciate that. I'll just read for the group. Charles, just a reaction. Great news about onboarding more chains at the account level, especially Solana. So yeah, we definitely know that as we move to this more graph-like version of Ceramic, that being able to add support for multi-account support, multi-chain support, as we had in kind of the original versions of Ceramic, is really important. So it's something we definitely want to keep building towards. So appreciate that. I know more folks might be typing, but this obviously isn't the only place that you can give us feedback. You can jump into our Discord, chat.ceramic.network, drop something in general or like any of the other respective channels. So this is not the only forum to connect with us. You can also use the new forum as well, which is another great way to connect with our team. I will pass it, to Avi, I guess, to wrap up here.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening and for joining. So here's kind of a call to action. This I know is probably the most engaged folks in the community, and I've joined about 3 months ago, and I love just the small edits on docs that people do. People get feedback all the time. So if you are someone that wants the latest and greatest access and you want to be involved in giving feedback before it is and want to shape it, we 100% would love to have you involved. So I think there's a link we're dropping, and there's also a Google form. Basically, we're just trying to ask you what would you want to get involved with, and just kind of capturing your email so we can like reach out early and give you early access to release candidates before the public has access to it, early versions of it. And we just want to make sure that it reflects something that you see and it's on your product roadmap or on your own project's needs. So would highly recommend getting involved so it can shape and reflect your needs. So that's where we're at.
Awesome. Thank you, Avi, Michael, Kate, Justina, for helping to share all of this out. Before we wrap, I also just want to pass it to Joel, who has some quick updates about some work that's happening around ceramic testnets.
Cool. Yeah. So currently there are three networks in ceramic. So one is the mainnet, of course. Then we have two testnets. One is kind of like a more solid testnet that's called clay. Then we have like a kind of, you can think of it as kind of like a nightly testnet where we like every time something gets pushed to the ceramic code base, that code will basically be running on that testnet, and we call it dev unstable. And so these testnets anchor and finalize ceramic commits or ceramic events into, so clay finalizes currently to Ropsten, which is a proof of work testnet for Ethereum. And the dev unstable network finalizes to Rinkeby, which is a proof of authority test network on Ethereum. And unfortunately, both of these networks will be deprecated by the Ethereum Foundation and the Ethereum community. And so Ethereum Foundation has set a deadline, but also like infrastructure providers might like, shut down their infrastructure before that deadline. So we want to make sure we're not like being hit by that. But unfortunately, it means that all data being created on these test networks are not longer going to be like stay there, because these anchors that have been made in the past on these blockchains are not going to longer be valid. And so we're actually migrating the Clay test network to the Gnosis chain, which is actually kind of not a testnet. You can think of it more as, if you're familiar with the Polkadot ecosystem, it's more of like a Kusama, as Kusama is to the Polkadot chain. It's kind of like Gnosis chain is to the Ethereum proof of stakes, or like the Ethereum beacon chain. So we're migrating Clay to Gnosis chain. And then there's a new testnet for Ethereum called Sepolia, which we will be migrating our dev unstable network to. Yeah, so the thing to note is like, if you have data that you really care about on some node on Clay or on dev unstable, then make sure to like make a backup of that data, because when you restart your node after this update, which I think the date we've set for now is the 25th, basically 19 days from now, that data would be no longer valid. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, and so I don't think this should probably impact too many folks here. I assume most people that are testing on Clay testnet are using our community nodes that we run. And I think there's very few projects that we're aware of that are running their own nodes. And I think for those, we've tried to contact most of the projects that we're aware of. If that's you and this is the first you're hearing about and you have questions, definitely feel free to reach out. Happy to jump on a call and kind of like walk you through what we would recommend, or like best practices. But shouldn't impact, I would say, majority of the community in a serious way. So with that, I guess we'll just kind of wrap up, and appreciate everyone for joining in. We obviously record this, so we'll put it up on our YouTube channel in a couple of days, so you can share it out with anyone else on your team that missed this. And otherwise, thanks for joining, and thanks to the team for presenting. Have a good rest of your day and week.